thank you guys for joining us today for our Meet the Agent series. In this series, we look to connect with agents that are currently partnered with SetSchedule so that we can get some insight into how successful agents throughout the U.S. are structuring their business, different business practices that they employ, and then also to get some insight into the struggles, the challenges, and triumphs that you've experienced with SetSchedule. So today we're actually joined by this great an expert agent out of Southern California. His name is Sal Salinas, and I just want to thank you, Sal, for taking the time to make yourself available to speak with us today. And so first, I just wanted to get some background into you and how you came to get into real estate. So to start off with, tell us a little bit about yourself. In particular, where do you service?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on. So I think my real estate venture started way back when I was younger in the construction field, and I picked it up really quick and just always loved the whole nature of how houses are built and all the craftsmanship that can go with it. And that's I think where I started. After that I did go into the corporate world, and then some friends of mine, 12 years later, kind of brought me back into real estate and convinced me to get my real estate license. So that's how I got into real estate. I have been licensed for 7.5 years now. I service the San Gabriel Valley, LA area, LA Metro, and Inland Empire, Riverside County area, and the northern part of Orange County as well.
And so over that time, I know you said that you've been licensed for about the last 7.5 years, but as you were explaining that you've been within real estate on the construction side, but working with that, and you said you had a lot of friends and family in that area as well. So what are some of the changes that you've seen in your territory over the years that you've been involved in real estate and specifically as licensed as a realtor?
So yeah, I have seen in the 7 years the market that I've seen change and experience is there have been a lot of foreign investors that have made it a little bit more challenging for first-time home buyers to really compete against. You're always having to compete against that cash investor. So that's been one of a market change, as well as I think I've seen a lot of families that have been in their home for quite a few years and built up enough equity where they can, now that they realize they've outgrown their home, they can sell their home, have some down payment from the sale of their house, and then relocate perhaps out to the Inland Empire where they can get a bigger house and maybe even a more affordable mortgage.
It's like a higher quality of living almost.
Right, right.
And so I know you said you service the LA County and Inland Empire and those in Northern Orange County. What brokerage are you currently with?
I'm currently with Century 21 Care and Diamond Bar.
Oh, great. And how did you come to select
Yeah.
that brokerage?
A good friend of mine introduced me to this brokerage, and I came, interviewed with the broker. It just all seemed like a really good fit, very family oriented, and it just felt comfortable right off the bat.
So I know you had mentioned that earlier that you were you had been in construction and that you transitioned into real estate, that it was kind of a natural transition for you. But what has been the most exciting part of practicing real estate for you? Like, what is it, the part of your job that makes you love to get up in the morning and do it?
There's a lot of satisfaction I get out of real estate. There's different transactions, but I would say one that definitely stands out is helping that first-time home buyer. And it just takes me back. I can relate to when I bought my home. I was 24 years old, and I want to give that experience to that first-time home buyer, to my clients. What I kind of expected back then, or even things that I didn't know back then. I always do my best to inform my buyers of all their options out there when they're buying their home. So I think I've used that for my learning experience when I bought my home. I always remember put myself in my client's shoes.
So when you are building out your book of business, either so I'm curious to see how it is that you've built your book of business. So and I know that there have been a ton of changes in the industry, especially in the last 5 to 10 years as far as how that works. But so can you give us a little bit of background as to when you started out, what were you relying on, and how did you build your book of business? Whether that be your sphere of influence or referrals or lead generation sources, and then how that has changed, if at all, over the past 5 years?
Sure. So, yeah, it has definitely developed. I think I definitely did start out with my sphere of influence, family, friends, even referrals. I would say that's how, I started out. And then over that one, as I was developing, you have your listings or your buyers, you can generate other leads through that, and you just kind of start cultivating those leads, and they become clients, and then you start getting referrals. And that is something that you kind of just build up. You have to have a little patience for that. So that's one stream of a revenue of referrals that would come in. Additionally, too, the last couple of years, I've dived into more like online leads, um, and that's where I've come across SetSchedule recently and partnered up, and it's you just kind of absorb it all and create a little system to learn how to nurture and follow up leads and create um, time block part of your day so you can have time to follow up on leads.
Well, and that's actually just a great
And then
segue.
if I can,
Mhm, of course.
if I can also add, then those online leads become um, you know future business as well by referrals, right? So if you have a really good experience with them, or they have a good experience with you, I should say, then they'll definitely refer you more business.
Yeah, so it starts as a new lead generation, but then will turn into a referral down the road. That's great. And so that does kind of, segue into, I want some information sort of on that nurturing and cadence system, how it is. So when you get either a lead from a lead generation source or an internet lead, what's your approach? How do you reach out? And then, and importantly, how do you follow up with them?
So when I get a lead, I definitely try to reach out to them right away by phone call. If I make contact, great. Always, shoot for getting that appointment with them. Number two, if they don't answer, then I always definitely suggest, and what all the professionals say, a CRM. So plug them into a CRM. Whether it's a text or email, put them on a drip campaign. Put it on a schedule where you can, follow up with them, by a phone call a week later or 3 days later, and have some sort of schedule to do that.
So you segment part of your day each day, or do you do it like once a week? Or how do you put aside that time for that prospecting and the follow up?
It, I think everyone is, everyone's schedule. We all have busy lives too and family. So I think that the goal is just to create your schedule. If it's not, if it's not on a monthly basis or weekly basis, because we do have, other family commitments or to go to. So you just have to kind of block it around that. So if, say, for example, you're going to do evening follow-ups at 6 o'clock, but something comes up with family, then maybe just move up that time block from, 3 to 5, 3 to 6. So
I
that way you
see.
have some flexibility. But
Gotcha.
the
So,
key is that you know what you're going to do that day,
okay.
and then you got to execute. You got to do it.
Gotcha. So it's not necessarily about it being at that specific time, but that you have a plan for follow up and that you execute it.
Right, right.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay. And so in real estate, wherever your lead sources or wherever your client happens to come from, do you have a core specialty?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, listings, um, um, you know, seniors or empty nesters that are relocating, and first-time home buyers.
Okay.
That would be the core of my business. I do have a few investors that I've helped out with, buying, actually just kind of moving up from, a single family home, and then moving up to a duplex or a triplex. So I
Great.
definitely help out with that.
Awesome. And so what makes when you're approaching, what would make your approach different versus when you're working with, say, a first-time home buyer versus an investor?
Good question. So first-time home buyer, it's different. They have, different expectations. They have, they want a move-in ready home. That they can just move in their family. Some families are, expecting, their firstborn or the second. So they might not have the time to, do a renovation, or buy a fixer-upper. And they're just more conscious of, looking at the house, the condition of the house, and having it ready to move in. An investor, it's going to be, they're looking at the condition, of course, of the house or the units, but at the same time, they're looking at the numbers. The numbers have to make sense for them. So whatever money they're putting down is, for their ROI, it's got to make sense for them.
And would you say that one type of client is more labor intensive, or do they all have their certain points of friction or labor intensity that comes with it?
They're both different. I would say, with the first time home buyers, there's a little bit more of the emotional aspect that you have to know how to, you know, um, bond with them and understand with them, with on the emotional side. And then, there's the practical side too that you have to, definitely bring up, once in a while, or else, sometimes it could be, they could be looking for a long time if they're just strictly on the emotional side. And then investors, a little bit just more, it's a numbers game. There's really very little emotion in it. It just, and kind of going back, they want to, make some money and just, find them a property that's going to make them some money.
And of the investors that you work with, how often does that typically turn into you doing multiple transactions?
3/4 of the time they're leveraging their equity from their primary residence. It could be they're either refinancing and using that to buy an investment property, or they're selling it. So if they're selling it, then you have two transactions. You're on the listing side, you could potentially double in that, um, and then you have the buyer representation side. When they're purchasing that investment home.
I see.
So
And
that's very good opportunity.
is there any difference working with investors that are looking to flip versus investors that are looking to hold and rent?
Different approach. So a flip investor, you want to ask, what their expectations are, how much return they want to get, what their, ROI is going to be, or what they're expecting. So when you're looking for homes, you want to know what that purchase price is going to be, get an estimate of what those repairs are going to be, and the cost of, listing a home, and, what the ARV is going to be, minus the, paying out the commissions and escrow. So you have to do, more of an analysis on that to make sure it makes sense for that flipper. Um, when it's a buy and hold, yeah, a little bit different strategy. They want a more, if they're going to hold it, they're going to rent it out. They want to, make some money off the rent. And you have to ask questions. Are they going to, use a mortgage to buy? How much down payment? Or if they're buying cash? So those are all factors when you're going to calculate their ROI.
And so looking at the business now, where real estate is in 2019, going into 2020, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing when it comes to trying to grow your business?
I think right now there's, a little bit of the buzz of, there's a potential, little recession coming, and they're expecting, the housing market to go down. Um, the feedback that I get, a lot of people think there's going to be a huge recession coming again, as 2008. And, for me, what I'm doing, I'm reminding them, I have to remind them what caused the Great Recession, so to speak, or what they called it in 2008. All those lending practices are gone. Those rules and regulations got tightened up. So I don't foresee that happening again. If there's a little adjustment in the market, I mean, that's a possibility. It is an election year coming up. A lot of people may just kind of wait and see what the turnout is with the election.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's, from the people that are kind of hesitant, that's the feedback that I'm getting.
And so is it, how do you feel personally about that question of talking? Because, we've obviously that comes up a lot with a lot of the realtors that we speak with and stuff, this idea of are we facing down another housing crash? And so how do you feel that those differences in the lending practices will be enough to either prevent that from happening or prevent it from being as serious as it was in 2008? Like, have you changed your, I guess what I'm asking is, have you changed your approach to doing business at all with that in mind, that there's that potential for that a bubble to burst in a couple years or in the year?
I mean, I think if there's a recession, I don't think it's going to be caused by real estate or the mortgages. I think, if there's a recession, there's a lot of things going on right now, in the world that, may cause a recession that could affect the stock market. I don't think it's going to source from real estate itself. Um, and I don't think there's going to be another great recession. The new lending practices now that are in place are validating everybody's income. I think all that's going to eliminate that possibility of happening again. As
I
far as
see.
um, changing our business model, or what how we can just continue our revenue stream, I would say there's a big market still, I think, with millennials. So I think tapping into millennials. There is I think a small wave that's being predicted with short sales again.
Mm,
Um, there's still a lot of people that did modifications, that might be still on an interest type loan for 10 years. And from what I'm hearing, there might be a small little um, rise in short sales again, just due to that.
I see.
So that again, that could be, if that real estate agent or professional wants to tap into that, they could definitely prospect that.
So it's still just at the end of the day about making smart investments and knowing what it is you're going into and only buying what you can afford,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So now I just want to transition the conversation a little bit more into your experience with SetSchedule because, like I said, we're looking here to connect with realtors who can offer some insight into the business from in their specific region and their experience with it. But it's also no secret that you're here because you are a premium member with SetSchedule. So I do want some insight into how that has how you have experienced working with SetSchedule. So first of all, I'm just kind of curious to see what made you opt to partner with SetSchedule. What about SetSchedule stood out from other lead generation sources, and that made you ultimately decide to work with us?
Well, I was open when I started doing like online leads. I'm open to hearing what different lead generation sources have to offer. What I liked about SetSchedule is I like your interface on your dashboard. As leads come in, you can see where that lead is sourced, so you can pick what city or what area you want to work in and just kind of target. So for example, if since I primarily do a lot in the San Gabriel Valley, I can just focus on the San Gabriel Valley and not take leads that are maybe in the high desert or in the Torrance or South Bay area that are just if it might be just a little bit too far for me to service my clients well. So that was really one great feature. You can select, if it's a seller lead, buyer lead, and I know there's rental leads there. You can target the rental leads, try to convert them into buying. Um, so there's just a lot of flexibility. I like that. You can just basically pick and choose what lead you would want to take.
And so I'm curious too to see the kind of if you've employed a specific business model that's any different from that you would use outside of SetSchedule if you had implemented a new business model. So just kind of walk us through when you get a lead pops up on your phone and you decide to accept that lead. What is your process? What do you do then?
Once I accept it and I get the client's information, I'll call them right away. Again, I'll go back to hopefully they answer and I'm able to engage with them and have a good conversation with them to build rapport. So that is my goal, is just to build rapport, understand what their goals are, and set up an appointment. If I'm not able to get a hold of them or they don't answer, then I'll put them into a CRM so I can put them in a drip campaign and then start following up with them that way as well.
And of the people that you've connected with through SetSchedule, are you, because you mentioned that you sometimes will work with rentals or people interested in renting and talk to them also about buying. Would you say that they are very much know what it is that they want right off the bat, or are they looking for a realtor to sort of guide them through and help them make the best decision?
Yeah, I would say many of them don't know that they can afford to buy.
Oh.
Um, Mainly, they think they need a really large down payment. They think they need 20% down, and they need to rent now so they can save up money. Which is not the case. There's standard FHA loans, which are 3.5% down for first-time home buyers. There's conventional loan programs that are 3% down programs. There's a lot of government loan programs. There's state, local cities, and LA County programs that they could leverage for down payments. So I always bring it up to them and give them their options that they could leverage these programs to get into a home and just start putting their instead of paying rent, start putting money back into their pocket, build that equity. So many
Right.
times, again, just try to transition them and set up an appointment. At least, you know, I always try to push and say, hey, you can, if you're approved, great. Yeah, at least you can make a better educated, decision or informed decision whether you want to continue renting or you can go with the purchase. Some people don't even know where their credit is at all. Some people, you'd be surprised, they have really good credit and they had no idea. Or some people just, I think, are afraid to look into their credit. They think it's worse than what they think, and you'd be surprised. Again, they run the credit, it's sufficient enough to get a FHA loan or a conventional loan, and they actually think, oh wow, it's not that bad. You mean I qualify?
Yeah, I can understand that because I think I was raised on that sort of that adage of like, don't check your credit because then it dings your credit. So it makes the credit suffer if you know where you're at. But I see that from that point of view that it's actually much better in the long run to know where you're standing to make those decisions.
Right, right. Yeah, and if they're not ready, then working with a good lender, they can develop a good plan for them to either, if they need credit repair, or it's just a matter of paying down a certain amount of credit card bills, which will boost up their score. So a lot of people really appreciate that.
And so you mentioned if they're working with a good lender, how might one know if you are working with a good lender?
I do have just through my experience and relationships that I work with lenders, you learn to know who works well. You do a transaction with them. You might, for example, I might be representing a seller, but the transaction went so smooth that now I want to build a relationship with that buyer's lender. So that's how over time and through experience, that's how you build relationships. So then you do have maybe a handful of lenders that you can suggest or propose to them. I always tell them you can certainly shop, go to multiple lenders. You can go to Chase, Wells Fargo, go to all the big banks, your credit union, and just find out what they have to offer.
And how would you evaluate that? Is the best lender the one who approves you for the highest loan?
No, not necessarily. No, I would maybe even be a little cautious of that because they might not be looking or asking for all the right paperwork from the client. So I would say the really good lenders or the great lenders are the ones that ask for all their full documents up front, verify their income, um, you know, their bank statements, where the source of their down payment would be coming from, and ultimately, if they give you a full underwriting approval up front, then that's a very solid approval.
So would you say that having relationships with lenders is also a very like crucial aspect of practicing real estate? So you know that you're getting people into the right hands and getting correct or accurate information about where their financial uh, or where they are at financially.
Right, absolutely. Because ultimately, we want the transaction to be as smooth as possible. So if they do use one of the lenders that I suggest, I mean it's great. I know that their approval process is very thorough, and I would expect the escrow to go very smooth, and ultimately that would make our client happy and give them a good experience through the whole home buying process.
And then, and turning back now to specifically with SetSchedule and your experience there, when you're calling around, because one of the challenges of lead generation is that you have a lot of the leads are going to not end up transacting, especially right away, for a variety of reasons, whether that be where from the seriousness of the home buyer or shopper, or you know for a variety of reasons. So, what is one of the or some of the objections that you encountered when you would contact SetSchedule prospects?
Well, first I want to say, like any, I think, online lead or even if you're door knocking, it's going to come down to a numbers game. So um, you're going to get some people that are, going to question, how did you get my number? And then you could say, well, you asked for information on this property, which is why I'm calling you. And they'll ask you, no, I didn't ask for anything. And so and that's fine. You're going to get that. But you could always maybe turn it around and offer, ask them a simple question. Are you looking to make a real estate transaction soon? Some might say, yeah, maybe, yes, I'm thinking about it. And, you know, you can always say, well, is it okay to follow up with you in, 3 days or next week if it's a better time? So you can just follow up with them. That way, um, they can feel a little bit more comfortable. And to them, it's going to be like just a call out of the blue, or at least it could be their perception. So if you could just follow up with them and be, top of mind, I'm the realtor that's been calling you, then, I think they'll warm up and you can build rapport over that time. And there's some people too that just maybe made a mistake in pressing, a link, and they're just flat out not interested, and that's okay. We just kind of go on to the next.
And how do you reach out to your prospects? I know you mentioned that you will call them first, but if you don't get in touch with them, do you email or text, or what is your cadence?
I'll put them into a CRM, and I would suggest just researching a good CRM that can do both, email drip campaign and a text drip campaign as well. I
Great.
think that's what works best, and that way you can just try to nurture them. Maybe send out a monthly or biweekly or monthly, just update on the market. Interest rates have dropped. Would you consider making a purchase now? And you'd be surprised. You might get, quite a few responses from that.
Great. And did you ever have any experiences reach with the set schedule prospect where they might have right off or initially been a little reluctant or hesitant to engage in a conversation with you, or where they might have thought they wanted one thing, and then you were able to educate them and open the door to have a conversation about it, possibly either a different kind of transaction or opening their mind to a transaction when they might have been a little reluctant to speak with you?
I would say, yeah, I remember one gentleman that kind of stands out where he was interested in, it was dollar lead. And, after following up with him a couple times, he was, he was pushing back. And I just kind of brought up, I asked him, I said, well, if you do make a real estate, transaction, if that's something you're considering, I just kind of offered information on a couple propositions that seniors can do, with Prop 60 and 90. They can transfer their existing tax base to their new home. A lot of people don't know about that. So he really appreciated that information. And with that, I was able to at least meet with him or set an appointment with him, and I can go over that with him. So, um, I started to build a little bit of relationship. So I think if you can just find information to offer to them that a lot of people may not know, that will go a long way.
Okay, so it sounds to me like you're saying you focus a lot on the educating and building that rapport, so that you sort of model yourself as an educational resource that they can tap into when they have those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can offer them all the, information, then I think the goal is if they can look to you as, that source of, for any real estate, information.
So can you tell us about a little bit about a transaction that you closed with the set schedule prospect?
Sure. So that was actually, it was a listing. I, the set schedule actually set up an appointment, for me. So I had called them just to follow up and make sure that our appointment was, on that time and that day. So they confirmed, and I went over there and, um, went prepared, and went over all their options, and built a lot of rapport. It was, I think, like a 4 hour consultation, but it went really well. And the next day they called me. They just said, okay, we want to move forward with it. So it went, yeah,
Great.
it went really well.
And so, in going back to what we were talking about, whether that be internet lead generation or whatever your current business model is, whether that be door knocking or anything, that rejection's an inevitable part of doing real estate. I would even argue that real estate is quite possibly the most brutal industry out there, and I think that's also kind of evident by the fact that it's hard to find agents like yourself that have been in the business for a long period of time. So when you are talking to new agents who are either just getting into real estate or just getting into using internet lead generation and facing all that rejection, I'm curious, how do you deal with it? How do you stay positive? How do you keep moving forward when you hear a lot of no's?
I think truly understanding, and for me, like I did hear a lot that it was kind of back what I mentioned earlier. It is a numbers game, um, and the more you just keep plugging forward, keep plugging forward, no matter how many no's, you're gonna get that one that is interested in making a move. Or you might even, if so, example, if you're door knocking, you could have 20 no's or no answers, and then you just have a great conversation with one seller, and they give you a lot of time, and you gave them information. You walk away that you just gave them some value. That in itself will boost your day and make you feel good, and it'll keep you going. So you just have to know that eventually you're going to have a really good positive conversation or a good, really solid lead, and it'll come up. You just have to keep plugging forward.
So then lastly, to kind of finish this up, what would you say to any agent that is contemplating partnering with SetSchedule?
I'd say, sign up, be open-minded. You know, I would say make sure you have a CRM in place so you can just kind of get started right away. Um, or even if you just use an Excel spreadsheet, something that will just you can use as a reminder.
So just to have a plan of or your cadence, your CRM, all of that in place, and then and just be willing to take the chance.
And I want to add too that you guys do have a really good like open house tool. So even for that new agent that just signed up, if they're starting off with helping with open houses, they could definitely use your open house tool. It's great, um, and they could manage their leads that way.
All right. And so before we conclude today, is there anything else that you would want to say in conversation with your realtor community, or anything that we didn't touch on today?
I would just say to any new agent, it's going to take a lot of work. The success will come. You just have to keep plugging forward and um, be open-minded to different sources of leads or referrals, and just don't give up. If you don't get anything in 2 months, you might get something in that third month, and then that will get you started. But as long as you put in the work, I just that's what I feel is if as long as you put in the work and not sit around and wait for something to fall on your lap, you will get results. People will see that you're a hard worker, and then you'll get business. You might even get other agents that know that you're hardworking and they'll want to partner up with you. So, which I can definitely vouch that from experience.
Well,
And
thank
that's
you
it.
so much, Sal. This was it was a pleasure speaking with you. It was a great conversation.